Sean Piket here with Sales Integrity. Thank you for listening to the Sales Integrity Podcast. This is a special announcement update episode, so it's not going to be our normal format here that you're normally accustomed to on a Mindset Monday or any of our podcasts. And the reason for that is last week we completed our 20th episode of the Sales Integrity Podcast, which was one full month of podcasting for 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. And at the end of the episode last week on Friday, I promised to provide a quick update on lessons learned for the first month of podcasting, and more importantly, improvements we're going to make to the podcast moving forward. So no intro music, no outro music, just kind of raw update from Sean here. And it's really based on all of the feedback that was provided or that has been provided so far from you as the listeners and the audience out there. So first thing is I just want to say thank you very, very much for all of those who sent emails, sent me a text, gave me a call, and even provided some feedback through social media. Really appreciate that. I'm looking to improve this podcast. It's really for you as the audience. So if I'm just sitting here talking to myself and pontificating and nobody's listening, which isn't the case, we're picking up a listener base, which is great. But if it's more for me and it's not resonating with you, then that's not the point of this. My whole point here is to add value to those that have a complex technical sale, those that are out there selling in the marketplace, those who are leading sales teams, to provide you with some unique, innovative, different, new ideas or reminders of kind of core ideas that you should be focusing on that can really help elevate your sales game. So that's really the whole point of all this. So the point of the update here is just to kind of share with you, we're going to make some improvements and kind of tweak the podcast. So I want to, do a quick special episode here to let you know why we're going to do that and where that came from. So really it was based on the feedback that we provided. So overall, people really liked the topics that were covered. They felt it was a nice, diverse set of topics, which was good. By far the most liked format or style of podcasts were the interviews when I had guests on. We could see that in our analytics as well, which episodes are more listened to than others. And by far the interviews of guests, kind of rise to the top there. So that was good feedback from people. And then we could just see the reality of that in our analytics as well. People like the shorter monologues, but longer dialogues. And what I mean by that, the monologues are where it's just me, focusing on a topic, on the podcast. The dialogues are, of course, interviews of guests. So they felt, hey, if you can get, the feedback I got, at least from the people that raised their hand or reached out to me and said, hey, let me give you some feedback. The feedback there was, hey, when you're on your own, try and narrow the focus a little bit of the topic instead of covering a lot of things. Focus on one thing. Maybe it's a compare and contrast of two different things, or at most a top three list. And I think I started weaving that in the last week and a half, so you probably have seen that or heard that on these podcasts where I started narrowing it down, like the Power of Three episode and top lists of things, stuff like that. So that was feedback that I had received. They just felt it was a lot of content jammed into each episode. So try and simplify it, narrow the focus down, and that would maybe make those monologues a little bit shorter. Ideally, people were requesting around 10 minutes, 10, 12 minutes. I used to do about 22 when I first started this, 20 to 22 minutes, but I've gotten it down to under 15, right around 14, 15 minutes. So I'll try and get them down to 10 to 12. And I think if I narrow that focus on the topic a little bit further, that'll help with that cause. And then on the reverse of that, or the inverse of that, the feedback was, hey, don't rush through those guest interviews. We know you're trying to keep it to a certain time frame, but when people are used to listening to guest interviews on podcasts, some of them even go an hour. Now we're going to try not to go an hour unless it's really an engaging discussion. One example of that is the interview with Jim Fortin. That was by far our most listened to episode, and people keep revisiting it. The focus was on neural persuasion, influence, persuasion, the power of all that within selling and communication, all that stuff. And we promoted that as much as we promote any other episode, but that was by far the most shared and listened to episode. And then all the other interviews are not too far right behind that, right behind the one with Jim. So we're going to look to book more interviews coming up, and we'll have more guests, and I'll make sure that, I'm going to keep some of my standard questions because I do want to get the guests perspective on cold calling versus social selling. Those are hot topics right now. I'll ask. I want them all to define sales integrity. How do they define that? So there's some kind of core questions I'll ask each of them, but I'll leave more free form time to see where the discussion goes and ask them specific questions about their niche topic, because I think that's going to be very beneficial for our audience. That was kind of my gut feel, but the feedback really reaffirmed that. The other interesting feedback that I received, I call it interesting because it was a little bit surprising, was that they felt it was a little overwhelming to keep up with the podcast for 5 days a week. And the reason why I say that was surprising is because it's on demand. It's not live radio, of course, where you're going to miss the show and try and make the time to listen to it. So it's on demand. It's on our website. It's on we put it up to YouTube. It's on SoundCloud. It's on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Play, et cetera, where they play podcasts. So you can go there on demand at any point. However, I think I know where this came from, because a lot of the people I'm sharing the podcast with say, hey, go give it a listen. I'm always instructing them to go back to episode number 1 and kind of go in order, because I kind of tell a story and one topic builds on top of the other. You probably noticed that if you've listened to more than one episode. So I think that's where that's coming from, where they feel like they just can't catch up because I'm spitting out 5 a week. So they felt if you could do less episodes per week, that would be easier to kind of digest and think about and go apply. So I'm going to listen to the audience and I'm going to narrow it down to 3 days a week. I don't want to do it 1 day a week. I know a lot of podcasts do it just weekly and it's 1 day. I think I have enough content and I've got enough ideas from the people we're coaching and our customers, and just being out in the marketplace and doing research and seeing what's out there and social and all that good stuff to provide good quality, unique content to help you as a sales professional, as a sales leader, sales organization for 3 days a week. So I'm going to go effective this week, narrow it down from 5 days a week down to 3 days a week. So it's going to be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So we're not going to do Tuesdays or Thursdays. The other feedback that I received is the themes weren't really resonating with everyone. What I mean by that is I would do Mindset Monday, Technique Tuesday, Wisdom Wednesday, where we interview a guest and have them share wisdom, and then Throwback Thursday and Finisher Friday. So they just didn't feel, I don't think they said, they didn't tell me it was hokey or corny, but I think that was probably the underlying message. They felt like, that just didn't really resonate, didn't move the needle for me. So I do believe in mindset and techniques and really, learning from others, through the interviews, as well as learning from the past. That's what the purpose of the Throwback Thursdays were, kind of throw it back to like Zig Ziglar's and, the gurus that kind of pioneered sales training and selling techniques and process and methodology and all that stuff to, really kind of glean from those lessons, say what's still relevant today. I like that concept. And obviously Finisher Friday, finishing strong and focusing on closing and follow through, all the key skills there. So the thing is, I'm not going to do the themes moving forward. However, I am going to weave all those in, kind of into the episode. So I'm still going to be focused on, let's get the right mindset. Let's be prepared. And then we could be organized and productive through learning techniques and applying those in the real world of selling. Still going to do that. But we're just not going to label each episode, especially now that we're going to Monday, Wednesday, Friday, themes for each day. So we'll just have a straight title. You'll see what the topic's about. You can dive right in. If it's a monologue, it's going to be 10, 12 minutes, no more than 15. And if it's an interview, we'll probably try and keep those around 30 to 45 minutes. I think it's a good amount of time where we're not going to rush it, but it's not too long where it's kind of dragging on. So I do have some specific questions, even on their niche topics, that I'll prepare ahead of time to make sure we stay on task there. But if some of them are real interesting and the guest keeps interjecting with some really good additional kind of add-on points, build-on points to the discussion flow, then I'm just going to allow that, within those episodes if I feel it's beneficial for you as an audience member. So keep that in mind. So the final feedback that I did receive was, boy, I wish you had a Q&A type section of the podcast. So where they could ask the coach or ask Sean some questions and I can answer some questions, kind of like the mail grab bag, if you will. So what I'm going to do for that, I'm more than willing to do that. And I think it's great. It's kind of providing some good coaching advice through the podcast. Send an email. If you have any questions, I created a special email for this so it doesn't get lost in my sea of emails. Just go ahead and send an email to Ask Sean. So ask is in asking a question. So Ask Sean, and I spell it the Irish way, SEAN. So ask Sean at salesintegrity.com. So ask Sean at salesintegrity.com. Go ahead and send your questions there. Just make sure to let me know whether you want me to give you a shout out and say your actual full name and company, or if you want me to keep it more confidential. And just be careful with what you share. If it's a question about a deal you're pursuing, don't put the actual company name in. If you do, I'm probably not going to say it anyways, just to kind of protect you from competitors poaching some of your deals and all that stuff. I'm sure there's similar sales professionals in different technology niches that are listening to the podcast. But nonetheless, ask Sean at salesintegrity.com. Also, we have 2 groups out there for B2B tech sales professionals. So one on Facebook, one on LinkedIn. Go search for those. If you haven't already joined them, join them. We're slowly building those up. It's only through word of mouth and kind of grassroots campaign. I haven't done any formal promotion of it or advertising or really made a huge push to grow. We're just kind of letting it steadily grow. So it's not gigantic at this point. Don't let that underwhelm you. We're going to put some time in. We'll eventually start promoting it and all that. But right now, we just haven't done that just yet. So share it with others that are peers in the industry that would be relevant. But the reason why I bring that up is because you can ask questions there. So just submit questions at the B2B Tech Sales Professional groups, either in LinkedIn or in Facebook. And then I'll kind of aggregate between the 2 groups, the 2 B2B Tech Sales Professional groups, one on LinkedIn, one on Facebook, as well as the Ask Sean at salesintegrity.com email. And then I'll start adding in that Q&A, ask the coach, ask Sean type segments as well. And if we get a lot of questions, I might just dedicate a whole episode to that, because these are going to be real world questions that people like yourself out there in the trenches selling complex technical products, services, and solutions would ask. So I think everyone could benefit from that. So I'd strongly encourage you to submit those questions, and I look forward to receiving those. So that's pretty much it. So let me summarize here and just wrap this up. We're going to go from 5 days a week down to 3. So it'll be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We're not going to have themes for each day. We're going to really focus on the absolute best content, the most timely, relevant content for the sales profession and folks that are specifically selling complex technical products, services, and solutions. We're going to do more interviews of guests. So there might be some weeks where I do, and not just Wednesdays. It might be 2 of the 3 days. It might be all 3 days might be interviews of guests. I'm starting to interview more and more and kind of queuing them up, stacking up the queue. So I don't want to interview someone like now, which is, we're going into the beginning of March 2017 as of this episode, and tell them, hey, I can't put it out there till November. So I might start putting more of those out there, especially since they're so well received and listened to and beneficial for our audience. So just keep that in mind. And then finally, I'm going to add an Ask the Coach or an Ask Sean Q&A type segment into, I'll either bolt one question onto each episode if we're doing all interviews, or if it's a monologue, I'll bolt one onto that, or I might just have an entire episode focused on questions from the audience as well. So just keep that in mind. Okay. So that's it. That was, just kind of a raw update here. Again, no intro music, no outro music, no promoting of anything. It's just more of, here's the lessons learned from a month of podcasting. A big thanks. Thank you to everyone out there who provided feedback, and even to all of you who are listening that didn't provide feedback. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and all that good stuff. And I look forward to adding value through the podcast moving forward. And that'll start as of today. We got another episode. This is just a special update. So there's going to be another episode that's a quick hit episode, for Monday here. So just stay tuned for that. In the meantime, go out there and help your customers buy what they want, buy what they need, and buy what benefits them. And most importantly, go out there in the sales world today and make it a great day.